Each day on Idaho Matters, through a wide range of topics, you'll hear from neighbors and friends about the ever-evolving social and cultural landscapes of Idaho. Listen to the Idaho Matters podcast at boisestatepublicradio.org today. From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudet. This is Idaho Matters. Tens of thousands of people signed up to vote on Election Day here in Idaho, and election officials have been auditing the voting process to ensure everything worked the way it was supposed to. Now, because it was a presidential election year, there was a lot of focus on not just who got elected, but also on how our election system works at both a national and a local level. So to answer those questions that have come up this election season, we asked Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrane to join us every Tuesday to take a closer look at these issues. And he is joining us once again. Phil, really nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, Gemma. This has been great just for both of us this whole way. So it's fun to be here now that we have made the results official and we're here at the finish line.
I know, right? It's been quite the race, that's for sure. So Phil, before we get into the registration numbers, just a few minutes ago, you came from a board meeting of the Board of Canvassers, which certifies the results of the November election. So let's start with this. First, who makes up the Board of Canvassers?
Yeah, we had earlier today, we met as the Board of Canvassers. So it's myself, it's State Controller Brandon Wolf, and State Treasurer Julie Ellsworth. The three of us comprise the Board of Canvassers, and our official role is to review and then certify the results. Today is when the results became official. So any of those legislative races that people have been watching, now those legislators have officially won. We'll be sending them their certificates, and next week, legislature will be coming to town.
Okay, so what exactly is this board's job, Phil? Because as you mentioned, you met this morning. So what exactly do you do?
On the most basic level, so we all received a 350 plus page report of all of the election results broken down by precinct from all the counties. So all 44 counties leading up to this had certified their local results. The county commissioners were the ones who certified results as the Board of Canvassers for each county. They come to us, we verify the information that the county posted against what they sent to us and their certified results. We compile all of that information. And really, it's double checking the numbers to make sure everything lines up. This is just part of that review process. And then, as you know, one of the things we added a couple cycles ago is in the interim between when the county sends us their certified results and when we certify the state results, we conduct some post-election audits. So we randomly select counties and precincts around the state and send out teams of auditors to go through and hand count ballots to verify that what the counties are sending us and what they posted as official matches up with what our auditors find when they go to the local elections office.
So, Phil, you spent the last 10 days or so conducting post-election audits. Tell folks exactly what that is.
You know, this really got, you and I have spent a bunch of time leading into the election, all about the steps we take to improve confidence in the elections, to make sure everything works smoothly. A lot of that is preparatory work to make sure the election is going to go just as it did. You know, I keep joking with people in the elections world. Ben Usursi used to always say, pray for high turnout and wide margins. And I must have been praying really hard because that's exactly what we got this election. We did a lot leading into the election, but now we're not done. After the election, we still want to have everyone who voted to have confidence that their vote counted and that the results really do reflect what the community's desire is. And so we send out teams of auditors. Every team is led by our office, some of our election staff. This year it was really cool. We partnered with Boise State and their accounting program. So we had accounting students from Boise State who also went out. And then they did hand counts. So the Board of Canvassers, Julie Ellsworth and Brandon Wolf, helped draw the random counties and precincts for the audits. And then over the last week, we literally flew people all around the state to go into elections offices, open up the boxes of ballots, and go through and hand tally results. We specifically looked at state Senate races for this audit, where we went through and did a hand count and verified the number of ballots match the number of people who checked in and are recorded as voting. The number of votes matched what was reported. If there's any variance, we documented that and tried to review it. And in many cases, I think one of the great benefits of the audits are not just the transparency, but we
Hmm.
get to review the county practices in every county, and we get to say, oh, here's ways that, we can organize things a little better. There are still practices that date way back that we find every now and then. It's like, oh, we can continue to improve and modernize our system. Even though it's going really well, there's always opportunities. And I'm just fortunate to have a great relationship with the county clerks. And it's a chance for us too to highlight the really incredible work that they've all done.
So, Phil, how exactly are the counties chosen that get audited? Because you don't audit every single county every election cycle.
Yeah, so it's random. We do it live. So the law actually requires that we do it manually. So there's no computers involved. We have tumblers with tiles, one with a number for each of the counties that we randomly assign, and then we same thing with the precincts. So we go through and pick those. We came up with a process this last year. One change that we made is the top 10 largest counties, so those over 25,000 registered voters, are always eligible to be audited. Obviously, that's where the most votes are, the Adas, the Canyon counties, for example. So they're always eligible. But then for the counties below 25,000 registered voters, once they've been audited, they won't be audited again until we've gotten through all the others.
Hmm.
Just as important as to go where the votes are, it's also important that we go into these small communities that might not otherwise get selected. And so, for example, we went to Bear Lake this election. We went to Custer County. I think the audit draw this election, it was interesting. We didn't have any of the really big counties.
Hmm.
But instead, we were really all over the state of Idaho. Pretty much every corner, and including central Idaho, got picked. And so we were sending teams all over to go do these audits.
So, I know you mentioned transparency, right, by doing these random audits. How important is that to really make sure there is transparency around elections?
There's one of the things I highlighted at the beginning of the Board of Canvassers meeting is we just had a very successful election. And anytime you host an event, everyone's hosted something, but when you host it and you invite 900,000 people, there's always going to be some challenges along the way. This election's no exception. And while it ran really smooth, this is an opportunity for us to go highlight the incredible work that's done at the ground level. I think one of the biggest things. So we have skeptics, people who want to see. We had public members show up to the Board of Canvassers to see the audit report and go through things. And I think it's great because we get to engage them directly and show that, hey, here's what we're looking at and here's what we're reviewing. I also think for many Idahoans, just knowing that we're doing this really is satisfying to say, oh, yeah, the state takes this so seriously. They're going through and not just running the election, but double checking the work, making sure that every single vote counts, making sure that the numbers line up. I think that really, it's shown that these steps, along with some of the other things we did before the election, really are boosting confidence. And we see it in surveys. When you ask most Idahoans, they have confidence in our election process. And I think that's part of the responsibility of our office is to make sure that people can have that confidence.
And so, Phil, what's next in this process? What about presidential electors and when they cast their votes?
Yeah, so we have, two big things. We're sending out our election certificates. For those who are following, you might be watching it closely, Gemma, but the organizational meetings of the legislature will start next week. So leadership members will be picked. They were kind of waiting for our office to say who's officially going to be the new legislators. So they'll be gathering
Hmm.
next week, all the new freshmen along with the others. And then the big thing for us is December 17th, we will be hosting the Electoral College. So the presidential election isn't over quite yet. This is one of those things, the academics always study the election nerds. We have our 4 electors who were elected to cast their ballots. Just like the counties certifying their results to us as a state, we've now as a state certified our results. The Electoral College will vote on December 17th and we'll send to Congress our votes for president. And it's at that point that all of this will come together to, kind of a finale where obviously President Trump will be elected coming into the next cycle, as well as our members of Congress. And so for us, it's just exciting to have record turnout for this election. So many people participate. And we want to, as an electioneer, we're going to build up the Electoral College this year because it's exciting for us to be able to cast our votes as a state.
Hmm. Okay, so you mentioned record turnout. Let's talk a little bit about that. How many people showed up at the polls on Election Day, November 5th, and actually registered to vote here in Idaho?
I think that's one of the really big things. We're so fortunate to have same day registration. You and I always usually talk about it when we're reminding people what to
Hmm.
bring to the polls and encouraging them to be there. This year we had over 121,000 Idahoans take advantage of same day registration. That's almost 10% of the total number of voters. And I highlighted this in our meeting this morning. It's actually larger. It's basically the second largest city in Idaho in terms of the number of people when you think about it. So that's a ton of people who, in many states, wouldn't have had the opportunity to vote. But we're so fortunate to have it here. And I just think it shows the level of excitement, too, that we had that many people be motivated to grab their ID, grab their proof of residence, head to the polls and vote, in addition to all the others who were already registered prior to the election.
So, is that a record for Idaho, same day registration?
It's not a record. It's really
Hmm.
close. It's not a record for Idaho. It's right up there with where we've been. Part of it, this. Idaho is such a fast-growing state right now.
Hmm.
I think if it reflects anything, certainly there was a lot of students, whether it was at Boise State, U of I, ISU, and others. But also, we just have so many people coming to our state. I've spent the last year talking about voters moving to Idaho and the numbers we see. For many people, they may have relocated here in the last 6 months or the last year and just hadn't gotten around to updating their registration. And so this was an important part of that process. We have the registration cutoff before the election. This is a chance for any of those people who missed it or, just hadn't really paid that close attention yet to be able to get in and vote. And I think it also shows that our system was working really well. When I talk to some of my peer secretaries, they don't have these tools, and so we're fortunate to have kind of the combination, not just same day registration, but also to have in-person early voting, absentee voting, as well as people going to the polls on election day. All of it came together, and that's how we hit record turnout overall
Hmm.
in terms of the total number of Idahoans who voted.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about that. So, even though it wasn't an actual record of same day registration and it got close, it was a record for actual voter turnout.
It was. We had over 917,000 Idahoans participate in
Wow.
this election, and that is a new record. It's exciting to see that many people show up and vote. And I can tell you, our office has this like sense of relief and excitement getting past this point today and having the results official. I think
Hmm.
seeing the overall turnout is amazing. The other part that's really just interesting about this election, you and I had talked before about early voting, how engaged that was. I think we'll continue to see as a state more early voting. But also, I'll just say it's really interesting from where I sit. We do not have any planned recounts. I can't recall an
Wow.
election where we haven't had, usually maybe there's some big races that have recounts. We've had that in the past, but often there's a school board or
Hmm.
a county sheriff's race or a levy or something that is really close. And in this election, there were close races, but all of them were hundreds of votes apart, nothing razor thin. And so it's kind of an interesting part for us to be able to be like, oh, okay, we're going to head into the Thanksgiving holiday, and everyone here actually gets a break rather than getting prepared to count more results.
So, overall, Phil, how are you feeling about this election cycle? Did everything go as planned? I mean, because, it always seems there's a bump in the road somewhere.
There's always a few things. I feel so blessed to be in Idaho and to serve as Secretary of State. I think the effort, I'm very fortunate when I talk to other states that we have 44 counties all willing to support each other, to work together with us. I mean, in many states, it can be contentious, say, between the
Hmm.
urban and the rural areas. That's not the case here. We have a very close relationship. All the preparatory work that we did, the 12 principles, I think partnerships like with you, Gemma, and Idaho Matters. I'm sure many people listening also saw, our efforts, whether it was the voter pamphlet going around the state, the TV ads, if anyone was watching any live sports, or if being on KTVB regularly, all of this, like really
Hmm.
addressing people's questions, helping them understand the process, as you have always alluded in your introduction, understanding how things work really gave Idahoans a boost. And so I think that showed up not just in confidence, but showed up in participation. and it ran really smoothly. I talked to Trent Triple, the Ada County clerk. He had assisted with early voting on the last day where it was really busy, and they did have long lines just because there was such a demand. But he said people would wait 2 hours and they would be just so grateful for the opportunity to be able to vote early and to participate in the process. And we got a lot of feedback along the way just like that. And so it feels very rewarding, I can say, for our entire team to be a part of such a historic event and to make sure that, our democratic republic will continue to thrive well into the future. And it's because there's dedicated officials all throughout the state, from poll workers to county election officials, willing to work together to make that happen.
Well, and I think it's so critically important about transparency, Phil, right? Like whether it's what you do, media. I mean, we are here to make sure that there is transparency so that the average person does fully understand how the election process works. It is, as you said, what keeps us a democracy. Before I let you go, really quick though, gearing up for the next election, or do you get a little bit of a break?
One, I just want to highlight, we really, Gemma, I appreciate you. I appreciate your work because I think you're right. That transparency is so important to the process. You're always trying to answer listeners' questions, and that our conversations throughout this cycle have really reflected that. So thank you for being a part of that system. And in terms of getting a break, hopefully we get a little break. The legislature's come into town, and as a state official, we're gearing up for the new legislature to come in. I'm just thankful that it seems to be that everyone feels great about our election system. So hopefully, as we head into the legislature, elections won't be the focus this session. There'll be something else. But we will have an election coming up next May. And so for all the people working elections, we are focusing on the horizon and what we can learn from this opportunity and continue to build and hopefully set a record for the election 2 years from now.
Yeah. Well, as always, Phil, we've really appreciated this time with you. So thank you so much. We've been talking with Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrane about the 2024 election process. Thanks so much for listening to Idaho Matters. Boise State Public Radio and Idaho Matters are members of the NPR network. It's an independent coalition of public media podcasters. You can find more shows in the network wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Gemma Gaudette. We'll see you tomorrow.
No matter what happens in Washington, the NPR Politics Podcast is here for you. For the latest news, insights, and analysis from the election and beyond, listen to the NPR Politics Podcast. No matter what happens in Washington, the NPR Politics Podcast is here for you. For the latest news, insights, and analysis from the election and beyond, listen to the NPR Politics Podcast.